Okay, I'm just gonna have to give you a completely different link, I think, because I don't know how to make it go back to an old video from Zoom. Okay. Okay, here's my share link. Copy. Okay, Jenny, got to chat. Here we go. Oh, I forgot to turn off the volume of my YouTube. Make sure that the sound is off on YouTube.
My volume is off on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm hearing something kind of squeaky from your side. I'm not sure what it is. Okay, it stopped. Nope, I can still hear it.
I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, it's a little squeaky thing.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the $1 million question, is if you can see my presentation slide.
You still hear anything?
Mm-hmm.
That.
Yeah, it sounds like a mouse on a treadmill.
No, I don't have anything. I'm not doing it. And I'm not moving my mouse either.
Yeah, I don't know what that sound is. It's a kind of a scratching sound, but that's okay. Can you see my presentations on the YouTube?
Yes.
Great, we got there. That's what matters. I think once I start talking, probably the squeaking sound will be overtaken.
I don't hear anything. So. All right, you're gonna be great.
I'm trying to see what I hear. I'm trying to think what it could be.
My computer's not making any noise.
Do you have a ceiling fan on?
No.
Let me see if for some reason it's my YouTube video. It might be that. I didn't get the sound all the way off.
Let me turn off my speaker and see if you hear anything.
That stopped it. That stopped it.
I just turned it back on.
And it came back when you turned it back on. It's your speaker giving me feedback. So.
Okay. Okay, I'll just mute myself until I have, if there's a question. And how do you want me to interject?
So if you just see anything that's like, hey, could you explain that again? Or people had a question about blah, 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 then that's fine. We can go that route.
Okay.
Okay, it's interesting because, yeah, there's such a delay. Okay, let me go back to my my presentation because right now it's on all of the changes I just did. All right, we got 7 minutes to go, so here we go. Thanks again, Jenny. I really appreciate this.
You're welcome. Anytime.
It looks like I haven't practiced, but I practiced tons, so it's just it's not innate yet, though. Are you going to do something fun with your friends today?
After lunch, we're gonna go to our lake house.
Oh,
And the
fun.
guys are gonna do some fishing tomorrow
Okay.
morning.
Yeah.
Hopefully it won't rain.
I think it's supposed to be clear all week, right?
Let me see. Yeah, it's
That's
supposed to be clear today.
my
Yeah,
mother
today
is
and
my
tomorrow
weather
should be-
reporter. She always lets me know every day. Pam, it's going to rain tomorrow, or yeah, she likes to tell me the
Yeah,
news.
there's a small chance on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, but it just depends on the place.
Yeah. I got all the way over here without my phone, which is not a good thing. Can you see the time? Let me see the time. I got
It's
6 minutes.
11:55. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna grab, right now, the only thing you see is my presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna go grab my phone just in case somebody needs to send me a text in the middle of all this, that the roof's on fire or something. Oh, it's right here. No, I don't have to go get it. Good.
Only minutes, so I think they'll survive.
There we go. No, I just meant if like Carol's like, you're going overtime or something. I don't know. It's good. I wasn't worried about my real life. I just meant the presentation online part. If there was some info I needed last minute, but I don't think so. On that, I'll turn my phone off on silent.
Looks like they didn't schedule any like breaks in between sessions. I saw from 12:31. Now yours is 1 to 1:30.
Huh. Not sure. I know that this is the shortest I've ever spoken anywhere. Well, I think I had one that was 15 minutes once, but it wasn't a presentation. It was just a little talk. So that will be my challenge. I ran 10 minutes over when I practiced yesterday. So I'm hoping to go faster today. It's hard because you want to share so much information, and so
Yes. Yeah, I went over the PSYOP one and the Title III one, but the moderator stopped me.
Well, yes, that's one thing I would like for you to do is say, Pam, you got 5 more minutes. If you can do that, that would be great. Can you see on YouTube if there are people in this session or watching?
There's 3 people watching now.
Okay. Well, welcome if you're watching. I think I'm 2 of the people, me and my YouTube channel. So I think that's 2 and you might be 3. So it might just be us.
Yes, it might just be us.
And if the sessions before mine are like the rest of us, they go over. So it'll take people a little bit of time to get all their links and things. So. I was all ready to change my background finally, and then I set up a green screen, and then it wasn't working right. So I was like, we'll go with the same one. My next presentation will have a different view. But if anybody's been seeing my presentations lately, they all have the same view, and I feel kind of bad about that. And I couldn't get Zoom to let me change the background, even though I followed the steps. If something wasn't working right.
Yeah.
So. All right, we're about to start. Still just the three, which is you and me and myself.
We went down to 2.
Okay. Okay.
Did you lock out something?
No, so it might have been someone checking in on us. To make sure the link works. I got 11:59, so we'll be starting in just a minute. If you're here already, thank you for coming, and we're excited that you're here sharing this session with us. Starts at 1 o'clock. We'll be right back. Go ahead and you can sign in the chat and say where you're from and what you do. All right. Well, welcome. My name is Pamela Broussard, and I am excited to be a part of the ML Summit. It is my favorite PD of the year. I just love it. I love the energy and the people that are in it and the things that they're doing. My session is called Stories We Hear and Stories We Tell. Now, these sessions are very, very short. So I'm going to go as fast as I can through this because we only have about 30 minutes or 25 minutes. So here we go. So my name is Pamela Broussard, and I am the founder of Leading ELL. So if you need to get a hold of me, I have my website is Leading ELLs, my Facebook group is Leading ELLs, the Twitter, email, all of that is Leading ELLs. So you can find me one of those ways. Fastest way probably to find me live is on Facebook. All the resources and links that I'm going to share for this presentation will be posted on my webpage. And so that way they're permanent and you can just go get them and you know where they are. I might be able to attach it, but I wasn't sure. So everything's at Leading ELLs. It's under the tab called Stories and Lesson Ideas. And so you can get those there, and everything is free. And the lesson ideas and the story links and all of that are right there. So stories we hear and stories we tell. And so 3 things I really want to cover today is why use storytelling, how to find stories, and ways that students can share their stories. So Stephen Krashen, Dr. Krashen, recently said, he said it all along, but in a recent seminar, he said, we acquire language in only one way, when we understand it. It needs to be comprehensible and very compelling, very interesting. And in my work with Mason, Dr. Mason is someone he's researching with, the best way to make sure that input is just right is to rely on stories. Fill language classes with stories. In other words, hearing and reading stories is the strongest, most effective way to support language acquisition. And a lot of us we do a lot of things that aren't storytelling. We do a lot of things that are rhythm and structure and memorization and grammar. And what we find is that is not as effective as telling a good story. So I'm putting this in here. We're not going to read all this now, so you can go back and stop the video and look at it later. But basically, research has also shown that when a listener is listening to the story, they are having the same reactions in their brain as the person telling it. Same thing with the motor skills. If you're talking about kicking a ball, it will light up on the MRI of the listener the muscles that are for kicking the ball. So these stories are like tapping in and making the English stick because they're firing off all these different areas in our brain and in our body. That doesn't happen with skill and drill. So language by Chomsky, language grows in our mind, and it's because we have a desire to understand, and when it is intriguing, we will learn it. Now, we know that kids learn it for a test on Friday, but it will not come back up naturally until they've had a desire to learn it. It's been interesting and stimulating. And where can you get that? In stories. Larry Filazzo on his webpage this week just also presented this research that out of more than 33,000 participants, they found that stories were more easily understood in learning the English than any recalling of essays and information from essays. Again, the power of story, because you're getting that emotional part and you're getting that language part and you're putting that together with the brain going off. So you've got all that working together to help the students learn. Jeff McKillen said, if you would, research says, if someone read the 7 Harry Potter books, they would have all the academic vocabulary that they needed. So I thought that was really an interesting quote. But we know more than that, more than just making it easier to learn. I'm really into the social emotional component. And we know that stories and books are mirrors and windows. We talk about that a lot in our community, but they're also stepping stones and protections and anchors and springboards. And I love this graphic because it really shared my heart about stories. But here's the real reason. The real reason is because I've seen it with my students, how it's been transformative for them. So this student right here read a story and we talked about the scholarship jacket. So when her little brother was in the hospital dying of cancer, she focused really hard on being the best she could be because she heard about these scholarship jackets. And she got a scholarship. And so then when a scholarship jacket, she got a Letterman jacket. And then when her brother miraculously recovered, she was able to teach him about the importance of clubs and organizations and getting jackets. And now he just got a scholarships to go to University of Houston, going through stories impacting other people. When this student told me his story, Christopher, about how he got in trouble doing graffiti in his country. And then he read a story about Daniel Angelou, who's a artist here in Houston. And he read his story. He saw that his talent actually had a gift and could be used. And if you come to Houston, look for these beautiful graffitis throughout the city. This student, he shared his poetry, his story. And as he shared his story, school board member Tom Jackson heard it. He asked if he could have a copy of his story, of his poem. The poem talked about the hard times and the good times and really reflecting on the good and during those seasons. And then when Tom Jackson, wrote a letter back to my student and shared his story of how that poem impacted him as he was battling cancer, this kid carried that letter in his backpack the entire rest of the year because he got affirmation from a man in his life that his story was valuable. When this student shared his story, our entire class cried. Very difficult story. And then when he shared it again, and John, this man right here, heard it and asked him about it and said, I want to get a picture. You are so brave. You are so strong. And John's son heard his story. When John's son heard some kids later say some things negative about immigrants, he was able to re-share his story. At the end of the day, I asked this student, how did it feel? How was it? He goes, it was one of the best days of my life. And I hear that over and over as our kids share their stories, that they love it. When this student shared how she hadn't sung since she came to the United States, this boy confessed that he hadn't sung since, played the guitar. Well, I had a guitar I brought it to school. These guys played and sang every single day during every break for the rest of the year. And then this Vietnamese student who was in our class, heard their story about learning to play and learning to sing. And so he wanted to learn. So he got a guitar and he learned how to play. And then they got to perform live with a performer from Louisiana and Dominican Republic up on stage. When this girl wanted to share her story in our classroom through music, but she said, I've never sung in front of people before. We just encouraged her and loved her like you do in ESL classes, and we encouraged her and loved her. And she got up and she sang, and she got such a good response. She joined choir, she joined competitions, she got ones, and she sang in the talent show, and she's posted YouTube videos and got 1,000 likes because she shared her story. This student who was in my class shared his story in our class several different ways, several different times, but very validated. His other teachers encouraged it too. So by the time he was a senior and ready to graduate from his new high school, and he's like, yeah, I want to do a graduation speech. And so he did. And the principal at that school told us that it was the first time that she can remember a standing ovation from a graduation speech. So when he shared his story, she got to read it. She read his story. A teacher shared his speech. And so she wrote her own mock graduation speech, what she would say, what she would do, and what her dreams would be. When this group of students all shared their stories at a conference and 250 adults stood up and clapped for their stories, and kids were really validated for telling their stories, they felt like superheroes. So it was a powerful event anytime a student shares their story. So storytelling offers a space for us to reflect and to move past traumas and the ability to relish in the beauty of the moments that have long passed, and ignites the desire to unite with communities and with ourselves, all forms of healing. Storytellers takes us on a journey that offers us the ability to witness growth. The change we can see involves a difficult process, but the resulting growth can ultimately lead to a better understanding of our own identity. So my kids, because my students are new arrivals, even if everything was perfect in your life before you came, there's a lot of loss when you come. So there's a lot of space that they need for sharing these stories to bring healing and to bring hope in these new situations. But my kids usually come with a lot of other things that have already happened already too. And so those stories can also get told in class. And it's through our understanding of ourselves and our stories and our language that we heal. So how do we find good stories? In Krashen's work and in Dr. Mason's work, they do a lot with fairy tales, and I use those sometimes, but my students also have other stories that I feel that they attach to really well. If you're not sure where to get them, this question comes up a lot in the Facebook groups, is where can I find multicultural books that represent this culture, this culture, this culture? Again, I have them on my website under stories. There's collections there from elementary to high school, and there's picture books and things like that. I think most of you guys know that, so I'm going to go on to some other things. Saddleback Publishing also has high-low books that students can read and hear and enjoy. But what I want to share with you today is actually the digital resources that maybe you don't know about. Because as I was thinking about this presentation, I always thought, well, everybody wants to know, what can I have and use on Monday morning? Here's your Monday morning. Here's your Monday morning lessons kind of things, the things that you're going to be wanting to use in your classroom. So here's some digital resources. Again, they're on my webpage, so don't worry about having to write it all down. The first one is I've collected for the last 3 years inspiring stories about immigrants and refugees and asylum seekers from around the web. And I put them all together in a slide deck, and they're there for you to use. They're not copyrighted from me. So they're just the links to the outside sources. So this year, what I did is I give the students the links, and I have to read a certain amount. Maybe they're going to read 3 this week or 2 this week. They watch them, they read them. They're all different formats. And they get to pick, they get to select. This is a story about Jacob Mak, who's from Sudan, and he was one of the lost boys of Sudan, if you know those stories, through the civil war of the children who just had to walk for thousands of miles. And one of my students picked this story to read and to watch the videos. The thing is this student was smart. She was a good girl, a good student, but her language skills and her were basic, very beginning. When we got her, she came late. She came the second half of the year, or maybe at the end of right before Christmas. I can't remember. And so she had 1 and 2 word sentences, 3 words. She could pick out the main words to tell a story, but there was lots and lots and lots of gaps. So she wasn't getting tons of grammar practice with me. She was getting stories. And so then it was her turn. Now, one of the things, if you work with high school, if you tell them you're going to present and they're going to have peers, they're going to work really hard to get it right and to do a really good job on it, because it's an authentic audience. And so here's her presentation I'd like to just share with you that she used after seeing those stories. I just realized that I wasn't sure if I clicked the sound, so let me click that again. There we go.
From refugee to police officer, Jacob Mak's life was so difficult. Good morning, welcome to my show. Today we are going to talk about Jacob Mach's life. Jacob Mach is from Sudan. He grew up there during a war that killed 2 million people, including his father. When he was 7 years old, he walked hundreds of miles to safety. He lived in refugee camps for 14 years. It was an aggressive environment, but he found a new life in America when he was 21. He learned English, graduated from college, and dreamed of becoming a police officer. In his first time trying to become a police officer, he struggled with target practice and driving. The second time, he suffered a stress fracture to his left leg, but that did not stop Jacob to make his goal. So in his third time, he finally graduated from the police academy. Here is a replica of his police badge. At 37 years old, he has his dream job. He is a night shift police officer in Atlanta. Before we finish, I want you to know one of his values and a lesson that you can learn from him. That lesson is when you fail, you need to try until you get your goal. So that's it for today. Thanks for your attention. Have a great day.
So she was a student who could not make complete sentences naturally prior to this. Yes, she rehearsed, but the language that she learned from doing these kinds of projects, reading stories, hearing stories, you could see how she's grown and she's used and it's internalized because it's important to her. And Jacob actually called us during I got a hold of him. I digged around so I could find him and sent him a message on Facebook, and he called us and they got to talk live, and it was really exciting for her. Another story in that stack of 58 stories, which is about to be 65 because I have some more I need to add, is this story here. It's the story of Michaela de Prince, and she was born in Sierra Leone, and her parents died in the Civil War. So her uncle became the guardian, but she has a skin issue where she has a lot of white splotches, and they call her the devil child. She would never be able to get married there. And so the uncle really did not want to have to raise her, so put her in an orphanage. In an orphanage, one day, paper comes and blows up against the side of the fence, and there's a picture of a ballerina. Well, Michaela doesn't know what it is. She saves the paper and she shows it to her teacher, and she finds out that that person is a ballerina. And she's all excited, and she's like, I want to be one of those, because she looks happy, because her life wasn't very happy. Today, Michaela de Prince is a professional dancer, ballerina in a major dance company in Holland, I believe. Now, this story resonated really well with one of my students. At first, I was just curious why she had picked this story. And then I remembered that she too had been abandoned by both of her parents. And she too, I forgot one part of the story. Michaela's teacher gets murdered right in front of her eyes. And it was just obviously devastating for her. My student had her caretaker, her grandmother, murdered in front of her, and she watched that. And so she got to see how this girl had horrible things happen in her life, and her dream came true, and she got to be a ballerina. And I believe that the dreams are going to come true for my student too. And I think that's why she was really attracted to this story. And she was able to write about it, speak about it, present about it fluently. I have stories from different cultures. I have this gentleman from Vietnam, who I believe this is the one where he became a teacher, a principal of a school after he was in the military, and because he wanted to give back. And my student liked reading about him because he could relate culturally, but also because what was great about this man is that he was kind and gentle, which is also a characteristic in the student who chose this as his story. So I thought that was neat. And then one story, you might know this story. I had a student who is struggling with poverty, struggling with speaking, smart boy. He's going to be just fine. But at the time, he was really struggling with his oral language. His comprehension was good, but his oral language was hard. And he worked so hard to make an interview with Emily Francis. He wasn't going to work that hard on a grammar exercise I gave him. he would just do it. But he wanted it to be perfect. So when he interviewed her, she would understand him. And so the stories are motivating. Students really want to. All the stories on that list are success stories. So they all have good endings and inspire our students. Another really, yes, ma'am?
Ms. Gillen would like to know, how can you use stories, but also be cautious about drama for those students?
That's a really great question. You know, a lot of people I hear in chats and in groups and things, they worry about re-traumatizing students. And what I found is because for example, the stories I pick have happy endings and the students pick the stories themselves, then they navigate that because they have the trauma. The trauma is not new to them. And so we use those. So those particular stories that I just shared had some trauma in them. And I'm only sharing those are the ones I selected because they're the ones my kids selected. But you're going to see that there's other stories that don't have any trauma in them. They're not all dramatic like that. It's just the ones my kids like the most, actually. And they have the choice of any of the stories that they want. This is another group of videos that I love. They're so delightful. It's called the Muslim Youth Voices. And again, I'll give you the links in all of the, when you go to my website, they're all there. You don't have to worry about finding them. But the Muslim Youth Voices, and these students write their own stories and then they create the videos about them. And then a professional company is working alongside them, and they get to share their stories using real equipment, and they get to learn how to use it and things like that. And their stories are just delightful. And so I'd like to show you one of these. Again, kids created these.
Why don't you watch where you're going?
Here, let me get these.
No, I got it. Are you new here?
I am so sorry. Here, let me get these.
No, I got it. Why don't you watch where you're going? Are you new here?
I'm not actually.
Unbelievable.
So they have a lot of really fun videos that they have created. And I really like them because the kids have written them. The next place that if you need to get in interesting stories is Story Courts. And they have video versions and cartoon versions, and they also just have some listing ones. They have written transcripts that you can get, which is also helpful to use as reading topics. And if you look under the American Pathways, that's where you can get the ones specifically about new arrivals. But the other stories are great too. But if you're wanting to get some that really speak to where the kids are right now, I like this one a lot because my students, a lot of them do go to work in the offices at night, and that's what this story is about. The sound on my end is not working. Let's see if it'll come back. Let's see if when they start the cartoon, it does. No, it doesn't. Okay. Oh, there we go.
We were gardeners, and we were cleaning offices.
I remember the
You
offices.
remember that? We had the night shift cleaning. That's why, we had to take you and your brother. I didn't have a babysitter.
I have memories of running into everyone's office and eating candy from their candy dishes. I remember being with my brother in our pajamas with the little plastic feet. And I also remember you would always buy us a cup of noodle from the vending machine, right? Like a snack, and then put us to bed on people's office couches, and then you'd carry us to the car when you guys were done cleaning the offices. I remember that. Did they ever know? Did your bosses ever know that you took your kids?
No, I don't think so.
Is there anything that you've never told me but want to tell me now?
Okay. And it goes on and shares a really neat story. It's a very short. Most of the videos are 2 to 3 minutes. So you're not using, there's a lot of great books about immigrants, about refugees, but they take a semester or they take 3 weeks or 6 weeks. So these are very short videos that you can use to inspire, to talk with your students about the topics that a lot of them can really, really relate to. So I like those. For the sake of time, I won't do the next one, but then for the next one that's really, really fun from there, is one that I like. It's called Driving Lessons. And it talks about a guy from Pakistan who his father was a taxi driver when they came to the United States, and he was embarrassed by that. And then later he became proud of his father. And so again, just really great topics, videos to help, cartoons, transcripts and things like that. So StoryCorps is a great place to find more stories to tell. Green Card Voices is students telling their stories. A little caution there is that because there are new arrivals themselves, sometimes the English is not easy to understand for people who aren't used to listening to different accents. But all of them come with a professional written out story of that. So I would use the videos more as an inspiration and then read the stories that are the professional stories that are written. University of Minnesota also has a great collection of immigrant stories, 250. They also have lessons for the classroom and lesson plans on how to make your own digital stories. So really great resources here for you to find. And most of these places you can search by country and by topic, so you can really get things that are important to your kids. Here is one that I really enjoyed. This student here speaks so fast that I can't imagine my students being able to keep up with her. But the story's good. And so I can use it as a story and just show the video. I can tell the story, show the video with the sound off, or let them see it and then share it again with me speaking. And it's about how it was what's most treasured to her father. And it's this ugly old cassette player. And that was because when they were in the refugee camps, he would play it and all the people would gather. And then when he came to America, they would record their voices and send cassettes to their family back home. So another great way and great story and a great activity that you can do with your students. So
5 minutes, Pam.
All right, thank you. So how can your students share their stories? I feel that is the third part. Is so important that our students share their stories. And back to the trauma question you asked earlier. When we share our stories, students always have the opportunity to share how much or how little they want to share. So when we share our stories, they can be all different. They don't have to be hard. It's just that in my classroom, my kids have gone through hard stuff. So their stories are hard. But what you find is it builds a really close community, really close. And every student I've taught that we have shared our stories, they said it was the best day of their life. Every one of them, without fail. Here, and I'll show you for a minute how we share. Here are some of the different ways that you can share stories. It is in the on my page under stories. So I won't go through all that, but I thought I'd share a few that maybe you haven't seen. So there's the ways to get your stories. It's all there on the Facebook page. So here's one way is by rewriting poems. This poem is really popular for teachers in gen ed, psychology classes and places to rewrite. We did a little different because we rewrite it and then we did videos. So this is Where I Am From by my student this year. I'm going to play a little clip of it. It's based on a poem. The kids brainstorm, they write out their list of their ideas, and then they plug it in.
From by Brian Ruiz Peregrino. I am from Jalapeños, from La Costeña and the Monte. I am from the beautiful and salty sea. I am from eating dinner at 6 p.m. from waking up at 4 a.m. to collect Fusionets, and from fresh farm smell. I am from the trees around my house, near the beautiful sea. I am from celebrate birthdays and brown eyes, from Abraham Ruiz and Maria Diaz. I am from a huge family and making crazy jokes. From everything has to be perfect and vale más tarde que nunca. Better late than never. I'm from God and the Catholic Church. I am from really good fishing family, from ceviche and pozole, from the family married to Joe. I am from Oaxaca, Mexico.
Okay. So that's one of his stories. And again, that's not a sad story. It's just where you're from. What represents who you are and what makes up who you are. So get out of that.
And there's a question about Saddleback books.
Uh-huh.
If they're only available through Mayan.
No, you can get them other ways. Let me come back to that. Let me finish this and then I'll come back to that at the end. Great. Another way we have shared our stories is by rewriting this poem. This poem is by a Nigerian author named Ijeoma, and I have looked everywhere for the correct pronunciation of her last name, and I can't find it anywhere on the web. So for now, I'll just go on to her poem. She wrote a poem called First Generation, and she observes the people in her neighborhood that probably were doing different things before they came to America. And I'm going to read a couple of lines and then I'll show you how my students do it. Here's to the security guards who maybe had a degree in another land. Here's to the manicurist who had to leave her family to come here, painting nails and scrubbing the feet of strangers. Here's to the janitors who don't understand English yet, work hard despite it all. And it goes on through just more examples of things that she sees in the city and of different people that she knows. And then my students, we do it. We do it for the caretakers in our life, our parents, our guardian, our cousin, our brother, whoever was raising us. And we take time to reflect on how has this move impacted them? Me coming to America, how has it impacted them? And so here's a few that they said. Here's to the business owner who built a big house for all of her children, and now it sits empty. Here's to the factory manager who now sleeps alone in her bed. Here's to the woman who left her family to follow the man she loved and give her daughter a better future. Here's to the cashier who goes to church with my little sisters to say a prayer for me. And so they're all different things. It's individual, but one poem, it's really beautiful, really beautiful. We presented this poem to the parents, and then we toasted with a big glass of water, bottles of water to our parents. And the poem, both poems end, and here's to their children, to the children who, despite it all, will become artists, writers, teachers, doctors, lawyers, activists, and engineers. Here's to for never forgetting home. We are the children who carry the heartbeats of our motherland, and even in sleep, speak with pride about you and our families. Keep on. So then this is parents and family clicking and taking photos during the story. And that's when you know you've had a success, when the families are just so proud of their students. I've had students share at conferences, writing contests, school board conferences. But the biggest way my students share is at an event we call the Survival Museum. You don't have to put on a big event, but I'm just going to share you a few components from the event. So students can share their stories through music, dance, song. And this guy was a cellist, so he told his story through the cello. We have done art installations, sharing our story. This was called A Walk in Our Shoes, and everyone wrote, what was the most difficult part? And this was a time in my campus where there was a little bit of tension about immigrants. And so when people came in and just wept and were deeply moved, the whole atmosphere in my school began to change because people realized these kids' stories. And so I'll let you go read these a little bit later, but just some really powerful things. But my favorite one, we've done a lot by this time of the year, we've done a lot about metaphor. So my favorite one was, the hardest thing for me is the clothes. I feel like a dog in a lion's clothes shop. The clothes in the US, I can only wear a small size. And this is about a very, very tiny student I had who couldn't find clothes to wear that were like a teenager. So I liked that one. Other ways we've done that, my students are required to do an artwork project to give a metaphor of their coming to America. They can do it on in any way they want, but they have to do 3-dimensional. And so this is like being like a lizard who has its tail cut off, but it does grow back. Or maybe coming to America is like being in the middle of a desert, but you can still bloom. This is a student who his metaphor was a ship going through the waves and the oceans and all the trials. I showed him this. I sent him this photo. I said, hey, I'm going to share your photo tomorrow. He is now an adult. This is about 5 years ago, that particular picture. But he said, that was the best day of my life. And I hear that over and over. The days we share this, we have a big event where we share our stories. This was a girl sharing, and she is an elevator about the ups and downs of coming to America, and then the eagle. So here's a poem. The students write poetry about what it's like coming to America. Here's one of my favorite ones about finding and getting a parachute to get out of his country, but realizing that he's left so many people behind and they're still waiting. And it's really impact. When he shared this, the coolest kid in our class, who was tough and cool and a jock and all that, another student from his country read it, and the two of them wept together and just held each other. Dude, it was a real healing moment for both of them. And what I like about these types of projects is the dynamics of your classroom change. The school smart kid, the book smart kid, all of a sudden sometimes feels a little bit lost because it's not super structured. And how do I do a 3-dimensional project to represent my life? And you get some of the quieter kids who just go off. He's like, yes, I have so much I could say that I want to say through art, through music, through dance, and some other forms that aren't typical in a classroom. So this guy, who was the quietest boy in my class that year, I think it was 2 years ago, he did an elaborate train journey of his journey, and each stop had a different thing he'd gone through to come to America. Not his literal, but figurative. This, again, was the elevator going up and down. So one of the great things about stories and telling your story is you realize you can rewrite it. And this young lady was one of those kinds of students whose family's like, okay, you're going to your aunt's, we're done. And she had a very rebellious attitude and had gone through a lot. And her symbol by the end of the year, as her heart softened, as she got into education, as she started being successful, was a swing. And she talked about how her dad had pushed her and pushed her and pushed her, and she didn't appreciate it. And then she realized once she got high enough to see over the fence that she could have a whole different life, and that he was just trying to help her see that life could be different. So really great chances. We share them at our Global Scholars Conference, which is coming up March 26th. And why we do all these stories is it builds this community, it brings healing, and it gives the opportunity to learn English in a way that's meaningful, to express what I'm going through, what I hope to go through, what my future is. So jump in, share some stories, read some stories, and write some stories. But please share your story. Any questions? Here's how to get a hold of me. Here's my website, Facebook, Twitter. It's all the same, Leading ELLs. So thank you very much. It has been a pleasure. And if your kids write great stories, let me know. I'd love to read them, love to hear them. Or if they make videos, send them to me. All right. So I'll open this up if there's any questions.
Do you want to go back to the Saddleback book question, Pam?
Okay, yeah, Saddleback, if you get a hold of, if you come to my Facebook group, Tim McHughes is in that group, and he will send you free samples, and he will send let you know where the reps are and how to get a hold of people. So I think there's multiple ways to get a hold of them. So yeah, I don't know what Mayon is. So I just get a hold of them and let them know that I want them. You can get a catalog too. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. I don't see any other questions. I think I'm able to catch those. So thank you so much for coming. It was great to be here, and enjoy all the other sessions that you can watch that you missed. You can go back and watch them. All of them will be posted live. Will be posted to watch in replay. All right. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.